Oh, it was terrifying. And I'm just going to head off this question if it comes up at the end. But we didn't expect to run out of beer our first June. We opened in March.
Right.
The first weekend in June, our first year, we ran out of beer after an event called Pub Pedal here in Muskegon. And that drove us to open up our first production facility way ahead of the schedule that we had in our minds as something that was possible.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Total Michigan, where we interview ordinary Michiganders doing some pretty extraordinary things. I'm your host, Cliff Duvinois. So today I'm over in Muskegon. And of course, when I'm going anywhere to some certain area, booze will always be involved at some point in time. And there's this one company in particular that I have seen throughout my travels in Michigan, whether it's sometimes on the racks, on the stove, and in various shops. So for instance, if you go and listen to the interview with Kathy from The Wicked Sister, they actually serve the products there. And so I'm over here with a very proud co-owner, co-founder, chief brand officer of Pigeon Hill Brewing Company. That would be Michael Bauer. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day in Michigan, and any day it's beautiful before midsummer hits, you know it's a good day.
Oh, man, I tell you, it was a beautiful drive on the way over here. I was like, man, why can't every day be like this?
We're saying goodbye to winter.
Yes, finally saying goodbye to winter. Of course, we say that and we'll get dumped with 6 inches of snow tomorrow. So anyways, Michael, if you would, just take a couple minutes and just share with the audience, what is the Pigeon Hill Brewing Company?
Absolutely. We opened up just over 10 years ago in March of 2014. We started out with myself and my two business partners, Chad and Joel, just three guys looking to some extent to escape our professional lives, I think, but also to bring people together with the one thing that we knew we could do that with, beer, and to showcase our hometown, Muskegon, because at the time, Muskegon was still, let's say, down on our luck, and we weren't something that people necessarily thought of when they thought of the best parts of Michigan. And we thought, well, we can use beer to accomplish all of these goals. We can escape our corporate jobs, we can bring people together, and we can bring them to Muskegon and then instill a sense of pride in the people who are already here.
Yes.
And that's, I guess, in a very brief nutshell, who we are.
Okay.
How we got started.
So now where are you from? Are you from Muskegon?
I am.
Okay.
From a neighborhood known as Bluffton, which is actually where Pigeon Hill Sand Dune was before it was mined out for cast iron castings. It was a towering sand dune that overlooked both the big lake, Lake Michigan, and the little lake, Muskegon Lake. And it was a tourist attraction for folks from Detroit and Chicago. They mined it out for cast iron castings.
Ooh.
And now it's actually a man-made lake. So that was kind of my connection to the original Pigeon Hill.
Certainly. Now, so you grew up in the area. Where did you go to college?
I went to Grand Valley State for undergrad.
Okay.
And then I escaped Michigan. Said, I'm going to the big city. I'm never looking back. And I went to DePaul in Chicago for law school. I had the car packed up and ready to go, and my wife and I came back home the day after I graduated. I was ready to be back.
You were ready to be back. So let's take a step back here. What did you study for your undergrad?
Psych philosophy double major.
Okay, so you're smart.
With that degree combination, I'm not so sure.
Wow. Well, then, so you went up to Chicago, and then you got what?
My JD. So my Juris Doctorate. Got a law degree, and came back home to practice law. And that's I was actually practicing liquor law, following in my grandfather's footsteps.
For some reason, I hear a lot of people cheering right now.
Yeah. Well, there are lawyers, and then there are the lawyers that keep the booze flowing.
There you go.
I was one of those.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah. I came back. I did enjoy my job, but I knew that it's not the path I had intended to go down.
Right.
I actually had always wanted to be in this industry. And
you're talking about the beverage industry, the beer industry, the service industry?
Bar industry.
Gotcha.
How
Okay.
I looked at it.
Gotcha. Okay.
My family's been doing this for hundreds of years. And when we came to this country, we opened up a bar first thing. We're like, hey, this is what we know. Prohibition hits. kept the bar going. It was a candy store up front, but my great-great-grandma put 5 girls through college, and it wasn't with candy.
Oh,
so
I love this story already.
I knew that this was where I was going to end up, but I had to make myself marketable. I don't come from money, I didn't have a business background, so go to law school, come back, and working in liquor law, and then found my partners.
Right.
And here we are.
So what was it in particular about liquor law that you wanted to, well, first off, actually, let's take a step back. What is it about getting a law degree? Because you could have just just from the sounds of it, you could have just jumped right into.
Well, I didn't have a whole lot of business knowledge. I wasn't sure how to make myself marketable. And my wife wanted to move to Chicago.
Okay.
I had a double major in psych and philosophy.
Right.
Not really terminal degrees.
Okay.
And so I kind of sat there and I asked myself, how do I make all of this work? And I thought, well, I could just go to law school. I don't want to say it was on a whim, but probably more so than most.
Okay.
And that's how I ended up in law school.
Okay. So you went through law school. Congratulations on that, by
Thanks.
the way. No easy feat. So you go through law school. Now, you said the day after you graduated, you packed up the car and you're back here. Why leave Chicago to come back?
The pace of life there is not the pace that I wanted for the rest of my life. I miss a few things about Chicago. I love Chicago for 4 days. It's a great town to go see a show, hit a brewery, get some amazing food. But living there was something completely different.
Yeah.
I missed the pace of life here. I lived a few miles. Actually, I probably live farther from Lake Michigan now than I did in Chicago. And I see Lake Michigan every few days. There, it was too much of a headache to get down to see the big lake.
Right.
And there they talk in Europe, people work to live. They don't live to work.
Correct.
In Chicago, you live to work.
Right.
And that's not the life that I wanted.
But I could kind of understand maybe a little bit of trepidation about moving back because you got a law degree, but you're moving back to Muskegon, which you kind of alluded to at the very beginning, was not seeing very many good times. So I can imagine prospects here weren't that great.
No. I came back I did not have a job per se. My grandfather came out of retirement to help me start my own law firm.
Okay.
So it made for a very interesting first year. But by the time things really started to actually take off, we were starting this project. And it worked out because unlike being in a situation where I worked in a law firm with rigorous requirements, I was creating my own schedule and I was able to devote as much time as needed to getting Pigeon Hill off the ground.
Certainly. Now, let's explore that a little bit because at some point in time, you met the other owners of this place and you had a meeting, and I don't know how, you'll have to share that with us, but somebody pitched the idea and it just gained momentum from there. So talk to us about that first meeting.
Absolutely. So a client of mine had brought me over to his house and he was teaching me how to homebrew. And, this is, I'm still in the back of my head. I have this idea. I'm going to open a bar, but I'm learning to homebrew. And I go to Hopcat, and Hopcat's an epiphany for me. The first time I went there, when I think I just turned 21, and all of these things are melding together in my head saying, you don't want to open a bar, you want to open a brewery.
Okay.
This is so far different from what I grew up thinking I wanted to do, but it has the same best elements, which are creating that communal gathering place. So anyways, taking a long introduction to that, but I've got this kind of bouncing around in the back of my head. I'm thinking, I want to open a brewery. I go on to the LST 393, which is actually just behind the building that we're in right now. And I go there for a young professionals event. I've been gone from Muskegon a long time, don't really know a lot of people here. And
Sounds familiar.
I go there to meet people.
Right.
And serving homebrew on the boat is Joel Camp. He's a CPA by trade, and he had some pretty darn good homebrew. So I sat there, I struck up a conversation and asked, have you ever thought about opening a brewery? And I think Joel, he's a CPA, so he's running numbers in his head. He's going, okay, this guy's an attorney. I know how much attorneys will cost us. Let's have a meeting. So he invites me out to meet with himself and our third partner, Chad. They had been homebrewers together. They'd been working, they're in the early stages of opening a brewery. And so a week later, I found myself at a meeting with Joel and Chad. We kind of talked through some very, very basic details, but then they told me the idea they had for a name, which was Pigeon Hill. And I mentioned I grew up in the shadow of what used to be Pigeon Hill.
Right.
So it felt like it was serendipitous. I went home that night and told Alana, I think we might need to have a long talk about this.
Oh.
And, she's always supportive. So the talk was basically me explaining my trepidation and her saying, just do it.
Oh, you got to love that.
Yeah. I'm a very lucky guy.
No doubt. So the idea of Pigeon Hill is born. The three of you come together and you're like, okay, let's go ahead and do this. What was those first initial steps? What did that look like?
The first major hurdle was just finding a location. At that, I guess figuring out our business partnership and the boring details. But for us, the first thing that really sticks out in my mind was finding a location, because Muskegon, still to this day, but especially back then, felt a lot more compartmentalized.
Right.
And no one was doing anything downtown. But when you say and mean that you want to be part of the rebirth and resurgence of a city, well, that really points to the downtown area.
Right.
And I think a lot of our early discussions and, a lot, not debates, just a lot of our efforts were put into figuring out how we could do this project and have it downtown. Originally, Joel and Chad had talked about, let's open up a small growler filling station.
Okay.
And I was the one who, for better and worse, pushed really hard on retail. And so now we're looking, we don't just need 500 square feet. We need 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 square feet to make sure that we have adequate retail and production space.
Right.
And luckily, we did find that space in, right in downtown Muskegon.
So for our audience that perhaps doesn't know, what is a growler station?
A growler station at that time, now as well, would have been a place with limited hours where you might come in, sample something, get a growler filled and go. It's not a place where you go and gather and hang out and see live music, eat food, play board games. These are all some of the favorite things of mine that happen here, Pinewood Derby.
Right.
It's a place where you get beer and you leave.
Right. Okay. And then, so how did you come across this location?
So the location that we are in right now is actually our third location. We opened up on Western Avenue in the spot where Rake Brewing Company is, or Rake Beer Project is now. That was our original tap room. We started there with a really small system. I always say jokingly, but it's not a joke, that we opened up with what little money our wives would let us take out of the joint bank accounts. It was a shoestring budget. We built our own tables. We actually spent as much as we could on the system because that's what made the beer, and that was most important, and then cobbled everything else together the best we could.
Sure.
So we started with that. Then we bought what is now Sociable. It's our, we'll call it entertainment complex, 6 lanes of duck pin bowling, indoor beer garden, full restaurant, bar. We bought that space as our first production facility because we realized we were running out of beer left and right, and we had maxed out our space in that original tap room. So we needed more. And at the time, Muskegon's downtown corridor still was on the up and up, but it wasn't quite there yet.
Right.
We were able to get real estate at a price we could not pay for it anymore.
Right.
We couldn't even come close. But we were able to find this real estate, and it was a beautiful building, former Brunswick test facility. So the beautiful wood ceilings and or wood roof structure. And we bought that, started using that for production. Once we realized that space was getting tight there and that we had all of our production in what was then a really, truly developing downtown corridor, we thought, okay, this isn't the highest and best use of this space. This is one of the busiest corners in what is becoming the busiest part of Muskegon.
Right.
We need to move.
Okay.
Production specifically. And that kind of bring us to this space. At the time, we didn't want to leave the city of Muskegon because it's ingrained in who we are.
Yes.
We are downtown Muskegon. This is what we do. And we were struggling to find real estate that was affordable, that the zoning restrictions would allow us to build on at a rate we could afford. And then Joel jokingly sent the city manager an email and asked him if the city manager at the time, if he'd consider selling us one of their parking lots. And the city manager said, let's talk.
Oh.
And we got this parking lot for a rate that we could afford. There was a RFP. Nobody else was interested. There was nothing on this side of Shoreline. Well, there was a hotel.
Right.
And there was a restaurant over there. I shouldn't say nothing. But there was nothing of this nature on this side of Shoreline. And I think everyone else was afraid to try and do anything here. And we looked at it and said, well, yeah, that's terrifying, but we can afford it.
Right.
And it checks every other box. So we bought this property, we built out the production facility and white box the tap room that we're in right now. And then as soon as our lease was up at our original tap room, we built out the Brewers Lounge.
Sweet. For our audience, we're going to take a quick break and thank our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to talk about the way Pigeon Hill just absolutely took off and also what you can expect when you come here. We'll see you after the break. Hey, if you are enjoying these great interviews, just take a moment and go to totalmichigan.com/join, and you can get these episodes sent directly to your inbox because there's a lot more great stories coming. See you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Total Michigan, where we interview ordinary Michiganders doing some pretty extraordinary things. I'm your host, Cliff Duvenois. Today, we're talking with Michael Bauer, co-owner, co-founder, chief brand officer of Pigeon Hill Brewing Company out of Muskegon. And Michael, before the break, we were basically talking about how every time you seem to have a space, you outgrew it. And not only that, but it seems like you're running out of beer. So this tells me things are kind of like taking off for you. What did that really feel like, knowing that, wow, we got to keep upping our game. We got to keep producing more beer. What did that feel like?
Oh, it was terrifying. And I'm just going to head off this question if it comes up at the end. We're done expanding for now, at least. We have an 18-month pact. No growth for 18 months. Okay. All right. The third major project will do that to you. But we set out thinking we would certainly grow. Of course, that's the goal, is to grow. But we didn't expect to run out of beer our first June. We opened in March.
Right.
The first weekend of June, our first year, we ran out of beer after an event called Pub Pedal here in Muskegon. And that was our first expansion. We had to buy new 7-barrel fermenters, which were double the size of the first 4 that we started with. And then it was actually the release of a beer called Oatmeal Cream Pie, or OCP, that led us to realize we couldn't keep up with demand for it. And that drove us to open up our first production facility way ahead of the schedule that we had in our minds as something that was possible.
Right.
And at that point, we sat back and realized we just became a production brewery. We went from being your local watering hole, which is what we opened up as. Not saying it was our end aspiration, but we started thinking that's what we want to be. And to this day, we want that to remain our focus. But, we just became a production brewery. And, that kind of, I don't want to say spiraled, but it, in many ways, just kind of kept exploding one thing after another. Well, now we need a sales team. Now we actually need real marketing. Now we need designers to help with labels. And the next thing we knew, we're sitting here in this building, looking around going, how did this happen?
Because it goes by so fast. And
it does.
And I can imagine, too, because you talked about the marketing there, the fact that you have Pigeon Hill baked into your brand. Every local on the planet knows it. They're going to see the sign. They're going to instantly recognize what it means. But now it's the brewing company, too. So it's almost like you've built into something that really resonates with your local market.
And that was something for us early on that we thought a lot about. We actually talked about opening up brands more like Muskegon Brewing Company, which now we're helping some other folks launch a Muskegon Brewing Company. And we didn't want to be that geographically tied, but we wanted to be part of local pride. And Pigeon Hill offered this unique ability to take something that locals knew about, were proud of, cared about, and folks from Detroit didn't necessarily know about, understand, care about, but it sounded good.
Yes.
It doesn't sound like just Muskegon Brewing Company. They're like, oh, Pigeon Hill, what's that? Which in turn then gives us a chance to educate. You
share
go
the
to
story, yes.
Yeah, you go to our website. The story is the most important part of the About Us page.
It is.
We are here to spread the gospel of Muskegon and Pigeon Hill and, proud peoples who have been brought down a bit over the years and are working our way back up.
Right.
And I think that's actually what's helped us resonate so well in areas like Detroit. And you mentioned the Sioux and Marquette, these towns that have gone through similar struggles to our own.
Yes.
And are now, they're finding their new groove, just like we have here in Muskegon. And I think that it's the story that helps us all resonate. And frankly, I think when you are raised in a town like this, you're a similar people.
That's true. Because you all have that shared common experience. You grew up in the same neighborhood, you're driving on the same road. So definitely. Yeah. I would like to explore a little bit about the decision, because you've got, the brewery, you're making brew, and, people are coming here, they're cleaning you out, you're having to buy a new facility, which is great. But now all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, so let's start shipping our beer all across like the state of Michigan. Talk to us about the decision to do that.
Yeah. This is one where my business partners might disagree with me a little bit on how it happened. Maybe I just have a bit of PTSD. But I remember we had gotten our first production facility open. We've got, so we started with a 3.5 barrel system.
Right.
Barrel is 31 gallons. We now have a 20 barrel system with 60 barrel fermenters. So basically scaled up. I'm not a mathematician, but we'll call it 20 times. And all of a sudden we realized, well, we can make this beer, but we also have to sell it, because we were running out of beer, but that was 20 times smaller.
Right.
So now we need to sell this beer. And it was one of those few times I felt like we were a little bit caught off guard. We didn't actually go into that with a plan. Luckily, that was a time in our industry where you could still get away with going out without a plan. But it made us sit back and say, okay, so what's next? We have this project underway. We are getting this brew house, this system. We are going to be able to produce this much beer. What's next? And for us, the obvious answer was, well, we start getting it throughout the state. We have a product that we're proud of. And if nothing else, we can put brewed in beautiful Muskegon, Michigan, which you'll see on almost every can we make, on these billboards that we are then sending out as advertisements for Muskegon throughout the state of Michigan.
Love it. Every can is almost a little ambassador for you.
It's the goal. Exported from Muskegon. The exported from Detroit ad actually really struck a note with me. That was a couple of Super Bowls ago.
Right.
And that really, really struck a note with me. It was basically folks over there saying, look, we're proud. We might be a little bit different, but we're proud of it. And we're going to ship the great things we make to the rest of you. And that was kind of the sentiment we had when we started statewide distribution.
That's a recurring theme that I've talked about with other business owners that are in either the food or the beverage industry, is the key importance of buying Michigan products and using them, and then shipping your products throughout the state of Michigan. And that seems to be a real source of pride.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for us, the ability to go to the Sioux, to go to Wicked Sister, to go to Houghton and buy my beer, like personal pride, huge.
Oh, I bet.
But also just, again, it really for us is about spreading that Muskegon theme.
Yes.
To be able to walk into a place and see one of my posters that has the words Muskegon, Michigan, as large as or larger than my logo, I love it.
So in the time that we've got remaining, if somebody were to come here to Pigeon Hill Brewing here in Muskegon, talk to us about what can they expect when they walk through the door?
Absolutely. So you've got two choices. It's a choose your own adventure game from step one. You either come to our classic tap room to the Brewer's Lounge, or if you're looking for a little more excitement, a little more, we're going to say high energy, you go to Sociable, which is my old production facility that I'd mentioned. I'll talk briefly about Sociable and then focus on this, because if you're in it for the beer, come see us here. Oh, that was a bad rhyme.
That might be my audience.
No, what's that?
That might be my audience.
I
right
kind
there.
of assumed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you're going out for dinner and you've got the kids with you or you've got a group of friends, Sociable is the place that we invented to give us something to do. You know, Muskegon,
Nice.
when we envisioned that, really, there wasn't a lot going on yet, especially in the off season, the shoulder season, the colder months. There just weren't things we could all do, and we all live downtown.
Right.
So we envisioned Sociable as kind of a smaller city version of Punch Bowl Social. And we've got duck pin bowling, full restaurant, mid-century modern vibes throughout, all Pigeon Hill beer, more craft cocktails, or especially draft cocktails, an arcade. It's a place where you go to get up, stand up, move around, have a ton of fun. Now, if you're looking for a little more of a classic, what I call the communal gathering space, classic taproom feel, then you come to the Brewer's Lounge. And here we're going to have anywhere from, we'll call it 16 to 20 different beers on tap, all of which are, it's a mix of our mainstays that you can find throughout the state, but also a lot of one-offs that have been created just for the Brewer's Lounge. You're also going to find our board games, because this is the place where you come to sit, hang out, low-key, relax, enjoy beer, chat. At the moment, we are actually operating with food trucks. So we did have a kitchen. We're experimenting with some new things, as many folks, I think, around Michigan are.
Yep.
We've got food trucks. We're working on adding more food options that are, let's say, simple and also affordable, because I know that's a huge concern for everyone right now. And then on the weekends, if you're here, depending on the week, we may have events out in our brew house, which is one of my favorite aspects of this facility.
Yeah.
So you walk in during the week, during, let's say a Tuesday afternoon, you come in, you see wood paneling. The bar was modeled after old school Brunswick bars. And, it's more subdued, relaxed. But on the weekends, if we have an event, you walk out into our brew house and you see shiny stainless steel. You get this more, I'm going to say, industrial feeling. You get to see where your beer's made and have an event simultaneously.
Sweet. Now, if somebody did come here, what would be maybe a beer or two that you would recommend that they try?
It's I'm actually going to defer to your beer tender.
Ooh.
So we have phenomenal beers. Our brewers just knock it out of the park left and right, even when I ask them for crazy things like Long John donuts in a can. I'm really proud of the team that we've got back there. But depending on what you're in the mood for, we're going to have a classic lager like Lake State Lager, which is our newest statewide release. We'll have Shifting Sands IPA. We'll also have 4 or 5 other IPAs most weeks, not always, that range from your traditional West Coast to New England hazy to we have the world's most crushable double IPA. It's Rennie. It's 9.4%. Drinks like it's about 6.
Ooh.
It's dangerous. And then, we will have stouts and flavored beers. The best thing that I can tell anybody is walk in and our beer tenders are incredible. They know our beer from front to back. They can sit and talk you through the menu. And based on what you normally like, they'll make recommendations. They'll have you try a few things. And I have no doubt they're going to line you up with 2, maybe 3 of the options that are right for you.
Nice. Love it. And Michael, if somebody is listening to this and they want to come check you out, maybe connect with you online, check out your website, read more about the story of Pigeon Hill, where can they go?
First step would be pigeonhillbrew.com. We've got all of the about us. We've got our food truck calendar. We've got our events calendar. We've got directions to all of our spaces. And then after that, socials. You can always find us on Facebook and Instagram.
Nice. Michael, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us today and for the beer. It was absolutely delicious.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for being here.
Yes. And for our audience, you can always roll on over to totalmichigan.com, click on Michael's interview, and get the links that he mentioned above. We'll see you next time when we talk to another Michigander doing some pretty extraordinary things. We'll see you then.